So in terms of how we're going to get this out in conversation, there's actually a fantastic time to do this in almost every first impression encounter. Now, compared to day 1 and day 2, this is something that is going to come up in first impressions that you probably won't see in subsequent encounters. It's those getting to know you questions. Where are you from? What do you do? And sometimes, depending on where you are, if you're a student, it might be what are you studying? If you're in a foreign country, it might be what brought you here. But wherever you live, you know that when you meet someone, there's these very common questions that come up so consistently. And unfortunately, we answer these most of the time with the most rote, stock, boring answer that we possibly can, even if what we're doing is amazing. So we might say, I'm an entrepreneur. Or if you're an accountant, you might say, I'm an accountant. Students say student. If you ask where someone's from, they might have had a very interesting geographical experience that took them to where they are today, that involved chasing their dream, pursuing their values. Or on the flip side, they might have chosen to stay in the town they grew up in because they value family and they love the fact that there's nature there. But what you're going to hear is, I live in Chattanooga. Or I grew up in Sacramento and now I live in LA. Very boring answers that do not touch on values. So in both of these scenarios, what we want to do is to tap into your values and get some respect flowing back and forth. How are you going to do that? And this is going to incorporate everything that we've worked on so far. So there's a worksheet that's going to walk you through this. I'll have other examples, but this is just to get the cogs in your brain turning for today's action guide. The first thing is, a playful first answer is very useful. So when people ask where you're from or what do, you can say silly things. I told you that I used to say that I'm fun employed. So you can say something that is goofy. If you're a doctor, you can say that people pay you to cut them open. Whatever it is that is mildly playful, it doesn't have to be laugh out loud hilarious, but people are expecting such a boring answer that any kind of humor here tends to go a long way and gets them interested, being like, no, what do you actually do? So once you've got that playful first answer out of the way, now you can go into the real thing. And by the way, when it comes to where you're from, it's very easy to just say somewhere that you really don't look like you could be from. If I were to say that I was from China or I was from the Congo or wherever it is, people are probably going to look at me and then laugh. So you can do the same thing depending on what you look like. Now, moving to the next thing, we've got that playful first answer. The second thing that we want to do is trim the logistics. I find that as I have people expand upon where they're from, inevitably what they do is say something like, well, I grew up in Philadelphia, and then I went to school in Washington, D.C., and I worked there for 2 years after. Then I moved to New York City for 1.5 years, and then after that, I went to Brazil where I started my business, and then I flew back, and this is my life, which has a lot of different places that I've been. I'm very lucky, but they're just telling you where the locations are. This is boring. No one cares about the name of the town, and there are maybe a few ones that are different, and that might be New York, California. There's a handful of places that people just light up when they hear, but typically speaking, you can say the town that you live in and maybe the town that you were from, but you do not need to focus on this. What you instead want to focus on, instead of logistics, is your values. So what I might say, to simplify all that part of what I said is, well, I actually grew up on the East Coast, but I was really, really interested in social skills, and I couldn't afford to live in the US when I started my business. So I decided to move to Latin America, and I actually lived in Rio, which I love because nature is incredible. The people are so friendly, so I was learning more about, and I go off in that direction talking about my values. And you hear there, I skipped DC, I skipped New York, and instead I talked about the fact that I love nature, that I was starting this business. And now this takes us to the third thing, which is an element of mystery. I said that I was starting a business. I didn't drive down into, I have a YouTube channel that is called Charisma on Command. Now, this is very, very important because while you might be a fascinating individual and people would love to hear all about you, if you don't spark some kind of mystery and get them wondering, it turns into this monologue where you're just dumping on them, and pretty soon they're going, I don't know you and I don't care. If instead you're leaving these elements of mystery at the end of your sentences, they're more likely to ask, well, wait a second, so where did you go in Latin America? And then I can say, I went to Brazil, and continue my answer. So ways that I've seen people do this. What do you do, for instance, if you haven't traveled a ton, or if you don't have a job yet, or if you're just a student? You can talk about aspirations in the same way. So you give a silly answer about perhaps what you're planning on studying. You talk about the fact that you chose a major that you're really fascinated by, or that you started with a major that was maybe just for your family, but you've realized that there's much more to life, and you're very much looking forward to traveling to a country that is one of your favorites in just a few months. You see what that does? That creates mystery. You're not saying I'm going to Lithuania in May. You're saying that I'm going to a place that has this incredible culture and the food is going to be so good, I'm really excited. And the other person is asking, wait a second, where are you going? When you get that sort of feedback where they're asking you follow-up questions, they're becoming more involved. They're showing themselves that they are interested in you. And that's why you want to have this balance of playfulness, cutting logistics, sticking your values in there, and then still leaving some mystery by being a little bit non-specific around the fascinating points. Now, I know that can be complicated. We've set up worksheets that you can go through to do this, but this is your daily action guide. We want to answer at least, where are you from and what do you do? And we've got worksheets to help you. I'm going to go through a couple examples that I've workshopped from students as well in future videos, but if you just want to stop with this, what you can focus on is writing down your values, working them into your answers, including that fun, including that mystery, and then trying them out. What a lot of people do that is a mistake here is they write their answers and they go, I got it. And the truth is, if you find yourself in an interaction and you haven't said it out loud, you're just going to revert back to that boring answer. So once you've filled out our worksheets and written this down, move the paper away, cover your computer, look forward, and say what you need to say. And do that until you can do it without having to reference the paper. That's the point at which it's in your head, and that is going to be how you can take it out in public. Now, you might not get a chance to make a first impression today where somebody asks of you. So the action guide for today is simply to fill out that worksheet, move it away, memorize it so that you can say it without referencing that sheet, and then bonus points, incredible bonus points, if you go into a scenario like a networking event, a party, or something where you get to use these in person. That's really what's going to be to take this to the next level.